Hey there, welcome to the optional exercise for today. So this one I think is a neat exercise, but it's not really a game, so I didn't want to make it like the main exercise for the day, but it's a really good way to learn about functions. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to practice making a drawing. So the drawing that we're going to make is an American flag, so hopefully you're familiar with the American flag. And the idea is that we're going to draw it using a couple of different skills. We're, one, going to use our drawing skills to just make rectangles, like the red rectangles for the stripes, and then a bigger blue rectangle for the blue area. But then we're going to use code with functions and loops to make the stars. So here you can see the stars are drawn on. To be honest, with code, you could draw them as fast or as slow as you wanted. So if you wanted them to all just kind of like show up, you could. But here I put just like a short delay in there just so you kind of like see them get drawn on there. And the idea is that you're going to make an American flag. And so it's just kind of a challenge of can you actually figure out the code to make this thing. So it's not a game. There's nothing you do with the American flag at the end. It is simply an artistic animation putting the stars on here. Some things to observe about the flag. You'll notice that there's 13 stripes total. So that means that there are 7 that are red, it's on the top and bottom, and then 6 that are white. My flag is not regulation, so for example, you can see that like this white's a little small, that white's a little big. Not worried about it, right? And then after that, there's of course 50 stars for the 50 states. You can see that if you kind of like count the ones down this row, there are 5 of the long rows, and the long rows have 6 stars each, so 5 times 6 is 30. And then the short rows, which start here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and there's 5 across. So 4 times 5 is 20, and so that's how you get the 50 stars. So really, I kind of think of those two patterns as separate. There's the 5 that are 6 stars, and then there's another grid where there's 4 of them that are 5 stars, and they kind of overlay in such a way to make a cool little diagonal pattern. So that's what we're going to try to make. If you'd like to follow along, I'd love to have you. And we're going to learn some more about functions as we do it. So I'm going to come in here and say blank project. I finally just accepted the blank project is the same as blank block coding project. So I'm just going to try it. Click on blank project, living dangerously. And the first thing I want to do is, well, I don't need this actor, so I'm just going to delete him. I want to make the stage, right? So I want to just draw the stage with 13 stripes, 13 stars. So I'm going to click on the gear here for the stage. And I'm going to say add background. And I'm just going to draw a new background. And so what I want to draw is 13 stripes, 13 stripes via 7 red. Looks like I need to go a little smaller. Make that go in a bit. So 7 red stripes, and then the others will just work themselves off. Now I want to make this be some color, but I kind of want to make it be the right color, right? So I'm just curious, can I figure out by doing a search for like what color the American flag is? Wikipedia, I'm sure people use Wikipedia plenty as they're searching. I'll find it for us, but I just kind of wanted to let you know where I'm going. Like, if you wanted to learn more about things, you've got all the specs here about the official dimensions if you want to go color crazy. I'm really just worried about the colors, right? So here's the area about the colors. So it looks like the red is called Old Glory Red. Did you know that? I didn't know that. And here it has a hex color right here. So B222, I'm just going to write this down. B2223. 4. And then while I'm in here, I may as well write down the blue because I know I'm going to need it. 3C, 3B, 6E. Now this time your colors will be the exact same as mine, so you could just wait until I type it, right? So let's go ahead and start off by making some red. I chose to write down and memorize the hex version, which was B22234. And that is the official Old Glory Red, which is the U.S. flag, so it's kind of neat. Now what I want to do is I want to make some rectangles. And these rectangles, I always do that, I always make one on accident. These rectangles, I want them to be roughly 4 tall, and I want one of them to kind of be like right on the middle, right? So you can see if your eyes are just like amazingly good, You can see that it's 1, 2, 3, roughly 4 tall. And I'll just kind of make it about that big. And then what I'm going to do before I kind of let go of it, I'm going to do a Control-C, Control-V, and that'll kind of give me another rectangle. And I'm going to move it up roughly the same distance, around that 4 blocks. And then I always have to kind of like stretch it over a little bit, right? But I want it to extend the whole way. So actually, I guess you could put it like, way off to the side here, and then just stretch out the other one. That would work fine. I suppose I should do one on the very bottom and one on the very top first. Now, I'm happy to let you draw your flag however you would like, right? I'm just kind of like showing you how I draw mine. So the nice thing is I just made one rectangle. I hit Control-C, and then I just hit Control-V after it each time. Now, I'm not worried about going into that blue area because I'm just going to put a blue rectangle down on top of it. So I'm just going to kind of spread them all out here until I get something that kind of sort of mostly looks like 13 stripes. See if I did good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I did good. So try yours. If you need to pause the video, certainly do. I can't imagine that my pace is the same as your pace. This is an optional extra. So I do expect this to be very difficult for our younger audience, but it's a neat challenge if you would like to try to try your hand at drawing an American flag. The next thing I need is a area for the blue. So we already know what color the blue is, and you can kind of see that the blue goes down to where the bottom of the blue is even with the bottom of the red, and it takes up not a full half of the flag. But near half, like definitely more than a third or a fourth. And so that's what we're going to try to do for the blue. So for the blue, I'm going to click on this little wheel. I'm going to try to put in the correct hex color for Old Glory, I believe it was called blue. And what I have written down on my sheet of paper is that right there. So that is official American flag blue. And now I'm going to draw it to where there's just a big blue rectangle that kind of takes up this whole thing, right? Cool, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe I could have gone just a little wider even. If you don't like it, you can always just hit undo, and then you can just try it again, right? So no problems with undo as many times as you want. So I'm going to call that good enough. I made it just a little bigger, I think, than what this one is, but that'll just kind of give me a little more room to draw, so I just kind of cheat a little in there. And if I wanted to edit it later, I could. Doesn't have to be perfect. If yours is a little smaller, that's probably better. But this is the size that mine is. So now let's go back. Once you've got this drawn, actually, if you want to, this is optional. If you want to, you can fill in these spots with white. It turns out that if something's transparent in Tinker, it just shows through what's behind it, and there's white behind it by default. So I just kind of quickly filled them with white. I'm not worried about the little transparency that leaks through this time because it should just be white. Cool, so now I should have a nice cool stage. Should look about like that. Looks like we got a minor glitch on the top, which I am not worried about at all. So now we're ready to start in on drawing stars. So I need an actor. Now you may say, what actor did you use last time? I didn't see the actor. Usually it's like a cat or a dog or a robot or something. So the actor this time is kind of funny. I'm going to draw this actor. This actor is invisible, right? So invisible actors are the easiest to draw because you don't draw anything, right? And so now it's just, it's there. See here? There's my actor right there. I can see a little box around him. He is invisible. Awesome. And his name, instead of actor, I'm going to call him my pen, right? So he is my pen. So the first thing I want to do with my pen, oops, I thought I changed his name to Pen. Pen. He's my pen. The first thing I want to do with my pen is I want to practice drawing stars. So we're going to do this with functions, right? And this is a good practice for what we've been doing. So you're going to have an on start because that's like where your code's going to run out when it starts. But most of the things we're going to do are going to be inside the functions. So we're going to have to create a function. So go to the functions area and say create function, and make a function called draw star. So draw star is going to take no parameters. They should make a little stub like this for you. But what it's going to do is it's going to put the pen down, draw the star, and then pick the pen back up, and it's going to like use a marker. And you're like, the pen? What's he talking about? Put the pen down, put the pen up. There's actually more commands than what you see here. So there's these commands, which are all well and good, but there's actually even more. See this more button down here? Click on more. So these are more commands that you don't even necessarily know exist, right? And the one that we want this time is called pen. Cool. And so that one's going to be available to us now. So the pen lets us kind of do some markering. So now you can see that I've got this pen category. So I want to do a couple things with my pen. So one thing I want to do is when the program starts, I want to clear off any old pen markings, right? So I just kind of clear them off. I'd also like to set up my pen. I'd like to set its size and its color. So this is kind of like picking the marker out of the drawer that you want to use. So we want set pen size. I'm going to use 5 for mine. If you want a bigger pen, you could use like up to 10. That'd be fine. But 1 is kind of too small, and 1 is the default. I'm going to set the color. The color that I'm going to use is just all Fs. That's white. So pretend like what this does is this erases your current drawing, and then it goes and gets a white marker that's kind of a medium size of 5 out of your drawer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to functions, and I'm going to say draw star. So just wherever you're at, maybe it's right here, just draw a star for me. Now I can run that code, but it doesn't do anything because it does this, and then it calls draw star, and draw star is empty. So we're going to have to draw a star. So let's go ahead and draw a star. So here's how draw star works. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to put the pen down, and then we're going to do some drawing, and then we're going to pick the pen back up. And the reason we pick it back up is so that we can hop over to the next star without like leaving a line, right? So our drawing is going to be like in here. So let's talk about how you might draw a star. So I'm going to go to control. So this is a good opportunity for loops. So a star, let's draw a square first, or maybe a triangle next, right? So a star is really a series of movements, turns, repeated over and over. So everything I said there was a movement, either it's a movement or a turn. So let's try to see if we could draw a square. So maybe we'll say move 100 for our square. And then if it's a square, we need to turn some number of degrees. So a square would be a 90-degree turn. And we would need 4 of these things to draw a square. So if I were to run this code, it would draw a square. Now I drew it really fast, which is fine. It just like almost appeared, right? If you wanted to see each side, like what it's doing as it goes, this is optional. You can just watch this. You can put in a delay after each one, right? So here it would draw that side, and then that side, and then that side, then that side. If you wanted to do that, that'd be fine. Let's break down how these numbers got here. So 4 is how many sides you want. 100 is the length, of course, of each side. And 90. 90 is interesting. How does 90 get here? So maybe you just know that in order to make a square, you have to do a 90-degree turn. But the way it got there is interesting. So if you look at how many degrees there are in a circle total, so does anybody know? That's where I wish my kids were here. There's 360, right? And 90 is what a square is, because 90, if you're good at division, is 360, that's all the way around the circle, divided by 4, how many sides there are. So let's do something that seems a little crazy at first. Let's, instead of just writing 90, let's put in that math problem, right? So operators. So that math problem was a division math problem that I just did. So I'm going to take division and drop it in here. And that math problem was really 360 divided by 4. And so that is the same thing. It draws a square. Now if I wanted to draw a triangle, what I would do is actually pretty similar. I would change it to 3 sides, and I would change this to 3, And what that would do is that would draw a triangle. Hey, that's pretty cool. If I wanted to draw a hexagon, I would say repeat 6 times, 360 divided by 6. And so that would draw a hexagon. Hey, that's pretty cool. So now how do we draw a star, right? So a star is a little different. Because if I put in 5, because a star has 5 points, right? And I hit play, it doesn't make a star. It makes a pentagon. Well, shoot. I don't want a pentagon. I want a star. So a star is interesting. If you actually go look at a star, so star. A star has iTunes star apparently. No, I don't want that. Fine. I'll just think about a star. A star goes over and then turns a lot before it goes down, and then turns a lot and goes up, and it turns a lot and goes down, it turns a lot and goes up. It actually does, instead of 360 degrees, it does 2 laps. And so it does 360 times 2 is really what it does. Now, it won't let you do math like this inside these boxes, so I'm just going to do it for you. It's 720, right? So this is crazy, but if you want to make a star, a pentagon does 360 in the 5 points, and what a star does is a star does 2 laps, so a 720 in 5 points. It's kind of neat to see different numbers of points attempted, by the way. So here is a triangle, but with 2 laps. It didn't actually do anything interesting. Here is, sorry, that was a 6-sided thing. You can try to make a 7-sided thing, which is kind of crazy. And it makes some interesting patterns and shapes, right? But only some of them come out to be cool. But a star, obviously, is a cool one. I mention things like that because it's fun to just play, right? It's fun to just play with things. And so there we've actually made a function which draws a star. I like this 1 second for testing, but it's going to be too slow in the end. So I'm going to take this off. I mean, maybe I would add some delay at the end once I kind of finish this code. But to be honest, even that for testing might be kind of painful, right? So this, if I add it to the end, it'll kind of make some animated effect. I'll tell you what, I'll leave it on there until it's painful. So now we've drawn 1 flag, or 1 star. That star could, of course, be huge. If we change it to be 200, it draws a big star. If you would like to make it really big, you can make it 300. It's a giant star. We need to make it much smaller if we're going to put 50 of these things on here. And I know that this seems really small, but try putting it at 25 pixels, so quite small. Cool. So I think this is good enough that I should save it. So I'm going to call it US flag, and I'm going to hit save. So this is an optional extra for day 5, week 1. By the way, thanks for coming to do the optional extra. Maybe I should even spell optional correctly. Optional extra for day 5, week 1. So now what we want to do is we don't want to make just 1 star. We want to modify our code such that it draws not just 1, I'll tell you what, I'll just put that in the trash, but we want to draw a row of stars. And that ability to draw a row of stars is very powerful. And if you think about our solution, what we're really doing here is we're drawing rows of stars where this one has 6, and then this one has 5, and then this one has 6, and this one has 5s. We're doing that over and over from different spots, right? So this one started from here, this one started from here, this one started from here, but only did 5. So if we had a function that could help us, we have to look at what's different each time and what's the same. So the things that are different is where you start your x, where you start your y, and how many there are. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a really powerful use of functions. So let's go into functions and make our most advanced function ever, called row of stars. And it's our most advanced function ever because it's going to receive parameters. I'm going to go ahead and put them in first, number of stars. So our function, row of stars, is going to receive 3 things. So when you call this function, you're going to tell it these 3 things, right? And if you tell it these three things, the X and the Y for where to start, and how many stars you want, then it can create a row of them for you. This is getting pretty advanced, I know, but it's cool. And so to create a row of stars, what we're going to do is we're going to call draw star that many times, and we're going to move between each one. Does that make sense? And we want it to start at this X and Y. So let's go ahead and write this function together. Maybe I'll move it up here so you can see it a little better. So the first thing I want to do is if somebody told me to start at this location, the first thing I have to do is I have to tell my actor, my pen, to go to that location. Go to that location is a motion. So go to x0, y0. Now I don't want to go to x0, y0. I want to go to x and y. Now this is interesting. Those are variables, but they don't show up in this variables area. They show up right up here. And so you literally just drag it from there to here. It's called a local variable for the function. And drag it from here to there. So when somebody calls this function, the first thing I do is I tell my actor, my pen, go to that xy that they ask for, right? The next thing I want to do is I want to make a loop. So I'm going to go to operator, control. And I want to make a loop. And what it's going to do inside of it is it's going to run this loop number of star times. So you can see how I'm using those things that got passed in here. So it's going to run number of star times. And what it's going to do on the inside is it's going to draw a star, and then it's going to move over some amount. So I've got to use my function that I made called draw a star. So I'm going to stick a draw a star in there. And then I want to move over after that. And that move over won't be visible to the user because draw a star has picked the pin up at the end, right? So let's go ahead and say we're going to move over 100 pixels. That's a nice round number. If it turns out that I need to make it a little bigger or a little smaller, I'll figure that out. Great. So now I've got, it doesn't like for me to kind of overlap them and kind of run away from each other. So now I've got a function and another function that it calls, and I'm playing around with trying to move them to where they look good on the screen together. But I don't actually, in my main code, call this yet, so I need to call that. So you'll notice that now I've got this new block which receives arguments. It's interesting that receiving arguments is something we've been doing for ages. You just haven't thought about it, right? It's just now we're making our own function that receives arguments. And so now I'm going to start drawing this thing. So I'm going to go with the upper left corner, which is roughly negative 650, 348. That's roughly the right place. And I'm going to draw 6 stars. And so what should happen is my code will select my pen, then it'll call this function, moving the actor to that starting location, and then it's going to draw 6 stars, kind of drawing it and moving, right? And that looks pretty good, right? So if anything, my 100 needs to be a little less. I could do a little less, or actually, another thing I could do, I could just go in and I could make my green flag, the blue on my flag just a little bigger. That way I could keep my 100 because it's a nice round number, and I just modify my flag a little bit. What the heck, I'll do that. So I'm going to eyedropper this guy, and I'm just going to extend it just a scooch. And you can play with it until it kind of looks like it was part of the thing all along. All right, cool. There we go. So I modified my blue a little bit just so I could use nice even numbers. So I used 25 for the size of the stars, and those look about right, and 100 between each one, and those look about right. Now my 348 isn't a very even number. I wonder if 350 would look good enough, right? So now if I run it, yeah, 350 looks good enough. But I don't, it doesn't matter if yours is perfect or not, but try to pick something that kind of looks good. The next thing I wouldn't mind doing is trying to figure out where the bottom row is. I know that seems a little silly, but if I do the top and the bottom, then I can kind of figure out where the others are at. So I'm going to guess, based on some work I've done previously, 25 for the Y, and see how that works, and then I'm just going to move it after that. So I'd say that looks pretty good, right? So it's not Not perfect, but I'd say it's good enough, and it's a nice round number, being 25. I guess if I could go a little lower, I could see what 0 looks like. What does 0 look like? 0 is a little too low. I'll stick with 20. Why not? And so from here, what I want to do is I want to challenge you to see if you can figure out the rest by yourself, right? So see if you can figure out where all the rows of 6 need to go. So, there's probably one that needs to be, kind of right between these two. If you want to do the math, like, with an adult, you could try to figure out where they're at. If you don't want to do the math in your head, you can also use Google to help you out. So, for example, if I did 350 plus 20 divided by 2, 350 plus 20 divided by 2 is 185, right? And so for mine, I've got 185. And so if you wanted to try to figure it out, that would be great. But if you want to, you can just pause the video and do that, or just keep watching and I'll show you all the values that I used. All right, if you paused it, maybe you worked out yourself, but I think I've got my groups of 6 together. So the order I did is I did the top, then I did the bottom, then I did the middle, then I found out whether it's the middle of those two and the middle of those two. And then just to make it kind of like display better, I'm going to reorder them now so that it looks like I actually coded them in top to bottom order, right? So there is all the different groups of 6. Now again, see if you can pause the video, but see if you can make the groups of 5. So the groups of 5 are all going to start moved over a little bit. So let's see here. If this moves over 100, then the first one's going to have to move over 50. So I can tell you that they're going to be starting at like negative 600. And then you just kind of need to figure out what's halfway between those two. I know that getting the math perfect is a giant pain. But the nice thing about this one is you're only going to have 4 of them, right? So go ahead and connect that there. So they obviously don't all belong at 20. But see if you can figure out where they're all at on your own. They kind of go halfway between each of these. And if you can figure it out, great. If not, just pause the video and I'll show you mine in a second. All right, so I went through and I added the halves of those, and so I kind of put them in those spots. Again, if you felt the urge, you could reorder them to where they're kind of like appearing to go from top to bottom, right? So it does like a 6 and then a 5, and then a 6 and then a 5, and then a 6 and a 5. So 6 5 6 5 6 5 6 5 6 5, and that makes your animation kind of look cooler, right? So again, I better do one full screen. Again, this is not actually a game. This is a good learning opportunity because we learned about functions, we learned about function parameters, and we learned how you can kind of like make some art. There's actually a ton of things you can do with making art. I just thought that this one was a really neat challenge. It is a little too hard, admittedly, which is why it's an optional extra. I use it sometimes with middle schoolers as a math lesson for like doing averages, but that's okay. Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining the optional thing. Hope you liked it. I liked it. I'm kind of nerdy like that, and I hope you really enjoyed the camp. All right, see ya. Bye.